So hi everyone, my name is James Hall. I'm one of the global CTOs working for Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Following on from the GreenLake Cloud Platform conversation, we're now going to talk about kind of Capex versus subscription versus consumption, because those two are slightly different, so I'm going to explain those. But what I wanted to do is, I came from partner land, and I understand that, it's very hard to move away from Capex when that's how your compensation works. So you do a Capex deal, you make margin, you get paid on your margin. And that's tough, right? It's been a big learning curve, I think, for us as HPE to understand why it's been difficult to get customers and partners to understand the GreenLake proposition. But here's kind of the way I look at it before I start drawing and kind of do the difference between the two is, we're not telling you to go and stop doing Capex deals, right? Go do Capex deals. My view, as this is kind of what I'm thinking is, if you have 5 deals in a month or a quarter, and you convert one of those to a subscription or a consumption deal through GreenLake, and we'll talk about the difference between the two when we get there in a minute, and you do that maybe 6 months of the year, when you go into next year or your next financial year, you are going to be invoicing every month those deals that you've done. So let's say you've done 6 deals. Let's say you're invoicing, $5K a month, and depending on the partner status, that equals a certain amount of percentage of margin. Do you then go into each month with a certain percentage of your number done? That's kind of how I view it. I'm not saying that's a company view, because, the world is changing. We're changing as a business, right? We are a big organization. We do roughly $7 billion of business, every quarter. And we can't just switch off Capex and move to subscription, because that would leave us in a massive cash flow situation. So, my view is if we can slowly convert some of the Capex and margin deals that you do into subscription or consumption ones, you start to build that annuity revenue. So as you go into the following year and the following year, it creeps up and up and up, which helps you with your number. The other key thing, and I think this gets overlooked, is, we have a 1, 3, and 5 year subscription and typically 5-year consumption options. When you sign that with your customer, not only do you lock the customer into HPE technology, which is great because that's what we want to do, but you also, make sure that their contract is with you. So you don't then get competition from other resellers or in that customer around the deal that you've done, because you can't, because they're contracted with you and TD SYNNEX and us. So pick them wisely, choose kind of which ones you think will work versus which ones won't, because some customers are not there yet. A lot of customers are not in the subscription or consumption world. And maybe think about some of the products on the outside. So maybe you don't do it with compute or storage, but maybe you do it with the backup recovery service and the disaster recovery service. And then they become subscription, and then you start to build those. So, keep your Capex. That's going to carry on going. What we want to do over the course of, a year, 2 years, 3 years, is start to increase that subscription-based business so that it starts to grow and starts to compensate for when this one potentially shrinks, when the Capex potentially shrinks. So let's think about, subscription. Well, actually, let's start again. Let's think about a Capex deal. So most customers will come in and say, I've got 5 years budget. They're going to buy as much as they can, which means they hammer us all on price. That's fairly standard. It's often a race to the bottom on price. They're going to spend that amount of money. Part of the way through, let's say this is 5 years. Part of the way through, they may do an upgrade. So they may do an upgrade because they've acquired a business or grown faster than they should have done, and they need some more capacity. The reality, though, and if you look at our telemetry data from our customers, and we have a ton of arrays that dial home across all of our product lines, the vast majority of our customers actually, if they do this upgrade, that tends to happen in 3 years' time. Most of them don't, because most of them end up somewhere around 60, if they're lucky, to 70% utilized. So you have all of this investment up front. It takes you 3 years to get to a decent level of utilization. And if you've grown quickly, maybe you do a single upgrade, which means you've got to go and look for more budget, or maybe you do 2 upgrades, but you've got to go and look for more money and more budget to go and do it. So the key thing here is that, especially after COVID, where cash flow for a lot of organizations was really tough, people want to see their utilization not at 60 or 70% after 3 years or 4 years. They want to see that earlier. And this is the simplest way, I think, to position subscription or consumption to customers is, rather than buying a load of stuff and taking a long time to get there, why don't we understand what the written data is that the customer has? And we make an example here. Let's say it's 30 terabytes of written data. If I go the subscription or the consumption route, I want my minimum commit, because we do want a minimum commit. So my minimum commit to match what this is. Maybe plus or minus 2 or 3, maybe 5%. So now, when I commit the money monthly, I can go back to the powers that be and say, I'm immediately fully utilized on this platform because my commit level is 25 terabytes and I'm consuming 25 terabytes and I'm paying for 25 terabytes. And someone says, hey, we're running full, what do? We always provide a variable. And within that variable, so that's on-premise, that's for the customer to bounce in and out of. It's at our cost. As they do that inside the month, they might bounce in like this outside the month. From a utilization point of view, we take the average and then we just add that to the minimum commit. So the capacity is there to use. It's at our cost as they move in and out of it. If they do, some customers don't. They just have it there. They may go by year 3, they might move into it, but they aren't paying for it. But as they use that, we will charge them the average across that period of time. And let's say the utilization increases and we are fully utilizing or nearly fully utilizing the variable. We then agree with the customer, well, you agree with the customer and we agree with the customer that we are going to put a new variable in, so a new buffer. And then the same applies. I can then bounce in and out of this buffer. Equally, potentially we could reduce capacity. It's very unusual for that to happen. Most customers always go in the same direction. But this buffer, when we do this increase, that's agreed by all parties. So we don't just ship it and say, hey, look, you need it. We agree with all parties. Because sometimes, there might not be any growth outside of what's already been used in this variable, and there'll be maybe some of the variable there are still available. When the variable is consumed and it's agreed with everyone, the new minimum commit becomes what the variable was. So again, from a business point of view, I'm 100% utilized. So all round, you are spending cash in this world more effectively. You are always within 2 or 3% of being 100% utilized. You always have a variable, which means you've always got something on premise to bounce in and out of or to grow into. And if you're requiring someone to actually go and consume immediately, and your commitment changes as you go through those variables. So we're not saying don't do this. A lot of customers are in this world and they'll be there for a long time. But actually looking at it in a simplistic way, someone at the top of the business might go, actually, I don't want to commit all of that cash if I don't have to. I might want to go down this route. So the last thing on these 2 points I'm going to say is it's all about stakeholders. If you're going into a customer, make your decision up front that it is going to be either Capex or it's going to be GreenLake in some way, shape or form. If it's going to be subscription or consumption, GreenLake, you need stakeholders involved. IT people, procurement people, probably a finance person, and probably someone near the top of the business to understand I would say the simplicities in my world, but understand the differences between these two. So last point, because I mentioned subscription and I mentioned consumption. So subscription, where we have 1, 3, and 5 years. So that's GreenLake for block storage, GreenLake for file storage, and pretty much all of the portfolio today. When you go into the GreenLake cloud platform, the customer, or you work with your customer to define these levels, and you get given one price. I'm going to say maybe it's 5K a month. And then you choose your variable, and that's depending on what you use, you're going to bounce in and out of that, and we're going to charge you an average. So your price remains flat over the period. In a consumption world, your price, you have 4 price bands. The more you consume, the lower your price goes. And you have more choice in this world. Do you want to add third-party products like Veeam? Do you want to do storage, networking, and compute at the same time? So you get a bit more choice over here. The more you consume, the less you pay over time. And so you kind of think about the use cases. For partners, this is really easy to do. Right, it's a very simple set of T's and C's. It can be done very quickly with the customer. It can be quoted very quickly, and it can be delivered very quickly. This world has a statement of work, which is a contract, and that has to bounce in and out of our legal teams and the customer's legal teams and can take significantly longer than doing it in this world. The other difference is, and I kind of see this more recently in some market sectors versus others, but you kind of think, why would I have a 1-year subscription? So if you're a university and a department gets funding for a project and that funding is for a year, in the old world up here, you would have bought some storage. A year later, that department will be handing that off to IT, and they'll have to find a home for it. They'll have to take the costs for it. They'll have to take the power and the cooling, all of that kind of stuff that goes with it. Whereas actually, if you subscribe to some servers and some networking and some storage for a year for the life of the project that they're working on, at the end of that period, you send this back to HPE. So IT doesn't have to deal with it. They don't have to take the burden of it. They don't have to take the cost of it. So 2 different ways in which we price. You know, if it's a big organization, they tend to go down this route. But think about the use cases. You know, why would I do 3 years and when the standard is typically 5? Well, if you're an organization that's in finance and you know, processing stuff faster, you know, helps you make $2 million or £2 million versus £1 million, having the latest servers and the latest storage and being able to do that every 3 years without the burden of a 5-year write-down is again valuable. So make sure customers understand the difference between the two, but think about the use cases and the time periods that customers are working to and the types of organizations that you're talking to, because they differ. But this world is inefficient when compared to this world, even if you're going subscription or consumption, because you can size this in either direction for these 2 options, but you help the customer avoid this scenario, waiting a long period of time to get anywhere near utilized. By the way, the average down here over a 5-year period is probably more closer to 50%. So you spend a load of cash, and in 5 years' time, you might have used half of it. And then you go and try and refresh it, and someone's like, well, you know, why are you asking for more? Oh, because we're going to grow? Well, you haven't grown this time, so what's going to change? So actually, this world, in the long run, makes selling, and for customers, their internal conversations with the people that hold the budgets, much, much easier. And again, I'm going to reiterate, we're not telling you to stop doing Capex, but a mixture of Capex deals and consumption deals or subscription deals equals this situation, which is, this is what you do. As you grow those subscriptions or consumptions, every month you're going to start billing more and more and more. We want that to increase, which means naturally the Capex goes down, but ideally you want to get into a position maybe, you know, in 12 months' time or 24 months' time, where you go into every month with half your GP target done. That is the way I would think about it. I'm not saying that's the way you want to think about it, but that's kind of the way internally to kind of rationalize in your mind, why would I do it? And then it's just working with the customer to understand the best option and making sure you've got those stakeholders involved, because it's really important that you do. And make the decision up front. Sometimes it makes sense when a customer says, I need this, don't have the budget, I want to switch to OPEX. That's fine. But in a situation, you know, from the outset, is normally better and easier to decide, I know this customer, I know what they're doing, they're going down this route, therefore I'm going to really concentrate on doing that. Because flip-flopping between the two is hard work and often ends in losing deals. I hope that was useful. My name is James Hall from HPE. Happy selling. And if you need anything else, please come to HPE to ask or TD Synex.